In this video, we're going to look at the Las Vegas shootings just yesterday and explore from a military perspective what I think the civilians should understand and do in a time of crisis, in a massacre by a crazy, evil person. I'll tell you what, it still disturbs me even today, but um, like all wise people, an emotional response in the moment on the day is certainly destined for issues. So we're going to review a video and then look at a quick summary on what I think civilians can get from a military perspective, and then maybe a few words of consolation. So just to start, um, this tragedy is definitely deeply troubling to anyone that understands and values life, law, order, all good, you know, all righteousness. So, all right, let's take a look at the video. I might pause it a couple of times just to note a few things along the way, but it's about a 2-minute compilation of a few pieces of video that were posted on the ground. And yeah, some crazy stuff going on here, even with how the people are behaving, though not necessarily, uh, I can't say that I don't understand how they're behaving sometimes, but it's definitely not optimal. All right, see if we can start. Okay, notice nobody's moving. Everybody's down, and some people even say get down. Everyone's in place, everyone's in the open, everyone's scared like crap, I'm sure. Okay, these people, they're concealed to an extent, but they're not behind cover. They're inside a tent, obviously. They really don't know what to do, but they think they're safe. Concealment is useful, um, but it's not safe. Anyhow, as you can see, they're walking around. Some people that do know that they're not entirely safe, you might notice are crawling. Again, everybody down, they're holding each other, they're scared. Understandable, but they're in the open. A bad place to be. Okay, notice no gunshots for a while. People get a little bit of courage and they start moving. Um, Militarily, the automatic rifle is designed to keep people down, to keep their heads down, to keep them from returning fire. All of the things that this gunman needed. He needed people up. Uh, I can't really say he needed it, but we needed it, right? The things that we needed to neutralize this gunman. People needed to be up. They needed to be moving without panic. They needed to be returning fire. That in a war zone, that's what soldiers do. We return fire. We move. Over 500. Yeah, let me see if I can skip a little bit. And I don't think I'm really interested in the rest of this. So, taking us back to this scene right here, um, here's the military perspective. Um, the very first priority when you have fire is to return fire. That's the first objective. Now, so let's talk about returning fire. And this is exactly what happens. Let's say um, there's a group of 50 soldiers, let's see how many soldiers you can put in a Humvee, maybe 6 or 7. Um, okay, so maybe you got like 30, 40 soldiers in 5 Humvees traveling along a road, and they're ambushed. Maybe 2 or 3 people start shooting at them from nowhere. They have no idea where the shots are coming from. The very first instinct, or the very first training that military people are given is to move. Okay, once they can locate where the shots are coming from, is to return fire. So, um, where do they move? They move out of what we call the kill zone, or out of the area of fire, out of the open territory. So as we notice here, this is where everybody was listening to the concert and enjoying themselves. It's all open area. So the very first thing you do is move. Return fire if you know where it's coming from, but you move out of the area, and particularly you move to cover. Okay. Now, in an ambush, once you figure out where the threat is, you drive full speed towards the danger, towards the guy that's shooting, and you start firing towards them. This gives fear towards those who are ambushing you. The fear puts their heads down, it gets them to stop firing, and more importantly, maybe just as importantly, it kills whoever it is. Usually, whoever has 30 to 40 soldiers firing on their position and going full speed on their position, they're usually dead in seconds. A dead enemy is an enemy that's not going to be firing. Okay, um, getting a person's head down and stop firing, that's useful, but to be honest, a dead enemy is preferred. Okay, so from a military perspective, um, all these people should be moving not in a panic, but very quickly, not crawling, but walking, or very fast walking, all together. They should be moving towards cover, looking for really anything to hide behind. Concealment is useful to move behind, but cover, and so concealment's where the person, the shooting cannot see you. Cover would be something that where the bullets cannot pass through. A car door, bullets can pass through. Okay, so keep that in mind. The thickness and density of what you're hiding behind is important. Now, if you can get at least a little bit of cover, that can be kind of helpful. But all right, so everybody should be moving. That's the first priority, and they should all be moving out of that area, out of the open. If it's open area, it's the wrong place to be. Okay. Now, let's say that there was anyone that was armed. Now, most of those people flew in from other parts of the country, so thanks to TSA, they can't. Well, they could, but this is a great inconvenience to pack firearms. What they'd have to do is they have to put it in luggage, locked up, without ammunition, to be stored under the plane. And then they'd have to, once they arrived and secure their luggage, they'd have to make sure they're in compliance with all firearms laws in Nevada, including concealed carry laws. They'd have to secure their own ammunition. It's just a big, big pain. So, I mean, like literally no one there is going to be armed unless they're resident, which almost none of them are. But let's just say that some of them had a handgun on them. Okay, you might ask, okay, they have a handgun and they are firing at what? Some guy that's on the 15th floor, I think it was. They're really high up in a hotel that's really far away. What are their odds of being able to hit him? I wonder if I can get an image where it shows a good perspective with that hotel, because it is pretty far away. Okay, this is a good perspective. I think the guy was like somewhere way up here. Okay, is it possible with a handgun to hit a person that far away? To be honest, the odds would be really, really low. But the very first point is that if you can convince that guy that he's got rounds incoming, he probably will have, like you, had maybe a hard time finding him. When you find cover, you go looking around and listening where the shots are coming from. Go looking for maybe, um, how do you say it? When guns fire, there's usually a little bit of a light that comes from the sparks and from the bullets sometimes. So you can look for that kind of thing, but if you start firing at him, he's not necessarily going to even know where the shots are coming from. Okay, so at nighttime like this, um, returning fire isn't going to place you in nearly as much danger as you might think. And if you can convince him that he's got rounds incoming, you may be able to convince him to keep his head down and to not fire. Okay, so you don't even have to hit him. You can get just somewhere close. Okay, now it would be important um, for you to make sure you're only getting his room. You wouldn't want to put shots into someone else's room and risk hitting someone else. That's obviously a concern. You don't want to hurt anyone else. But hitting a large window to a room is much, much easier than hitting a person uh, standing or laying in that window. Okay, now obviously if you can hit the guy, you know, that's icing on the cake. But yes, returning fire is useful in a situation like this. Okay, let's talk about the emotions. You got strong emotions about automatic weapons. Um, First point on that, automatic weapons, militarily, they're designed to keep people's heads down. Um, they can serve his purpose of hurting a lot of people in a very small area. But again, as I was saying, everybody moves out of that area. Everybody disperses very, very quickly. Um, to be honest, he's not going to have the target-rich zone that he's after. And then his gun, his automatic weapon, becomes fairly useless. He needs accuracy to hit isolated groups of people. Okay, so he's not going to have that. He's not going to be able to just spray like he did, and the casualty rate is going to go way, way down. Okay, um, if he's got adrenaline going in him, that's going to make it harder for him to aim. And if you can put fear into him that he's got rounds coming in from somewhere, then that's going to put a whole lot more adrenaline um, into his body. He's probably going to want to give up at that point. Giving up for a shooter giving up is probably the best thing that we could hope for in a situation like this. So what about regulating guns? Okay, so the whole purpose of a firearm is to protect somebody against an opponent that is more powerful, that's more armed, stronger, more trained than they are. That primarily applies to women, to, I mean, just, we'll face it here, women tend to be much less strong than men. It applies to anyone that's not trained in martial arts, anyone who doesn't do weightlifting, um, anyone who's old. All of these people benefit from the Second Amendment right to carry firearms. So any legislation against that is going to be naturally pitted against the most vulnerable in our society, making them more vulnerable to this kind of evil, to evil men like the man who was man, you can't even describe a man like that. Should It's a lot of reason not even to call such a person a man. Anyhow, um, legislation against the Second Amendment or to restrict the right to own firearms does not make sense in this situation. What does make sense, though, and I've said this a lot, and it's probably not been talked about a lot, and I'll end on this, is that it makes sense for a nation, for a society, to understand the, I'll phrase it like this, the willingness and interest of a person to embrace violence. And I'm not just saying in particular gun violence, but the propensity of a person to engage in violence, period. Okay, now I'm not talking about self-defense violence. I'm talking about assault, like the willingness of a person to take someone's words as justification for violence. We call those, or at least I don't call them, but they're called microaggressions, and they're promoted by the progressive left. Um, those who take someone's religious beliefs as justification for what I call bigotry, which is violence or aggression or um, any kind of action targeting a person for their beliefs. Okay, so to be honest, I think the best thing we can do is to screen all citizens, no, all the population, not just citizens, for their willingness and their interest, not just in video game violence. I'm not talking about that. So I shouldn't even say not just, not at all video game violence. I'm talking about the openness to actual violence, um, road rage, and I'm not just talking about yelling in that case. I'm talking about a person willing to beat a person's head in because maybe they cut them off in traffic. Okay, because all violence translates to a propensity to escalate violence and to a lack of respect for other people, their health, their their right to make decisions, their freedoms. Anyone who's against freedom, who would say that you can't do or say something because it offends someone, that's a disrespect for liberty. It's a disrespect for people. It's a willingness to control others, and the desire to control is very closely linked to the desire to hurt. Usually people are willing to hurt others um, when they're willing to force them to do things. And I'll leave this last thought, that's pretty much what law is. You basically say armed police officers will make you follow a certain code, law, by force. And we're willing to make them apply force against you if you don't comply. Okay, so that's an interest in controlling others to the use of force, using the law as cover, using the government as a means to do that. So yeah, anybody that has an interest um, in those kinds of things, I would definitely screen, and I definitely watch, and I would definitely apply laws special to those people. I would try to avoid making those laws target particular religions, um, unless those religions directly advanced the use of violence to promote their beliefs, which there are some religions that do. All right, and I'm not talking about the use of violence to protect their own beliefs. I'm talking about the use of violence to force others to comply with their beliefs. All right, so that's really my takeaway from any time I see people go evil crazy on killing others, is that we need to look at the psychological health of people in particular regarding to their positions on violence. All right, so thanks for watching. I hope this helps and gives some direction as far as what we could take away positive out of this. Citizens need to learn. Immediately start moving. Don't run too fast. Do not push other people, because you're basically condemning them to death if you push someone else. Not just to be trampled, but if they can't get out of a situation faster, fast enough, because they fell because they were pushed a few times, um, you hold their deaths on your hands as if you killed them yourself. So move quickly, no pushing. If you do have to push or move people, make sure that you don't get them off balance. Okay, but try to avoid that. Move to cover quickly. If you're armed and you manage to find where the threat is coming from, be sure that it really is the real threat, that it's not someone else trying to find the threat. Maybe someone pulled out a gun and they're looking around for the threat and they're not actually firing. Um, do be careful that you're not trying to harm innocent people that are just trying to defend their lives. Look around for the real threat, return fire. Even if you don't think you can hit them, make sure that you don't endanger anyone else by your fire, and make sure that you fire close enough that you can get that person to stop firing. You can get them to get their head down Don't waste all your rounds in your magazine. Do conserve your rounds. Keep in mind how many rounds you fired. You got a 10-round magazine. Keep track of every one. Okay. Work on your breathing. Nice, deep, slow breaths, like count of 3 or 4. Hold it a little bit to let your body absorb that oxygen, then blow it out. Put a little bit of back pressure by closing your lips a little bit to force it through. And do this while you're looking around, while you're aiming on target, because you need that oxygen for your brain to get that accuracy, to think straight, to tell whether you're firing at the right thing or not. So you blow out. Again, a count of 3 or 4 as you're looking around. Calm yourself down, talk yourself down, just say, hey, things are going to be fine. I know it's bad, but I'm going to find whatever it is, and I'm going to stop whatever's bad. Okay, and in that way, you stop yourself from panicking, and you save lives. That's the military way of thinking. We keep ourselves calm, we keep a cool head, we find cover, we return fire, we stop the threat, we protect lives. I guess one more thing, if you find people that are injured, keep in mind that if you go down, you can't save others. So as long as the threat is active, your ability to respond to those in need of medical assistance should be limited. Because if you think about it, if you spend the next 20 minutes trying to stabilize somebody that's been severely hurt by one bullet, in that 20 seconds, maybe 60 rounds have gone from the attacker and placed 60 more people in a similar position. You're not really doing a whole lot of good compared to the damage being done. So if you can stop that guy from putting rounds down range and save 60 other people, then you just made the situation a whole lot better. So just keep that in mind. Tending to other people, if you're not able to engage effectively against the threat, does make sense. But if you are able to engage effectively and stop the threat, it makes a lot more sense to take the bad guy out. Okay, I'm going to stop it there. Thanks for watching and indulging in, I know, a very difficult issue. And I hope this brings some consolation as what you can do effectively and put perspective the public policy aspects so that we don't end up stripping lots of innocent and naturally weaker women and elderly and other weaker people who don't go to the gym and work out on a regular basis, people who are naturally less capable of defending themselves from their right to the Second Amendment. I know that was a longer sentence, but I'll just sum that up to say we need guns to protect against evil. We also need people to think in a military way to respond to massacres like this. Thanks for watching, and talk to you guys later.